have a conversation.
Right. Conversation amongst the brethren. Oh, that's what they say. So hello, this is Artist Rituals. This is episode number 3. No, episode number 4. And I have with me today a good friend of mine, RAMAJ, JAMAR.
Hello.
Like I've known. I was just talking to RAMAJ about we've known each other for almost a whole year now, and it's
Mm-hmm.
RAMAJ is a multi-discipline artist who has his foot in costume design and performance and scenic design and everything else. I'm sure he's going to explain. So
Not
how
that many.
not
Just a few.
everything. You're doing everything. It's not that many. You're doing everything. So Ramaj could just introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
So I'm Ramaj. I'm from Houston, Texas. I am a costume designer. I am a scenic designer. I also do visual art. Um, my preferred medium is digital, so I do digital portraits. What else do I do? I mean, I do a little bit of everything. I like to express myself. You know, the way I kind of see myself as an artist, or just as a storyteller in general. I don't like to limit myself too much. Like, oh, I'm a costume designer, so that's what I'm a storyteller. So whatever medium I feel is necessary to tell whatever story I need to get out, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to explore.
So you just said you do a little bit of everything, which proves my point. He does everything.
A little bit of everything. Just a little bit. I'm not going around saying I'm this and I'm that. I'm just doing me,
Right. Well,
speaking my truth through art.
you had won um, an award that amongst art world people would know about. Can you tell us about that?
What award? Nah. You're talking about the Princess Grace Award?
Yes.
Uh, yeah. So basically, it's how can I explain it? It's basically this grant or scholarship. Depends on what you're going for. That usually an institute or a school or a program would, I would say, nominate a student.
Mm.
And from that point on, they would go through this process in order to receive a grant or a scholarship to get them through their studies or to produce some art, whatever, like it may be a film or their thesis that's coming up. It can pretty much be anything to support the artist while they're in the program. And so I was able to be nominated for NYU, the design department, and went through the process. Got a design award, and they helped me out with my tuition. And it's basically just this, I would say, like a mafia of artists who are there to continuously support you, keep up with what you're doing, support your work, and also there's some financial benefits they provide when you get adopted into the mafia, so to speak. So yeah, I got the Princess Grace Award.
Nice. So I sent you some questions earlier, and we'll probably vamp and flow. But I want to start with what are your some of your rituals as an artist?
I, you know, this is a bit of a complicated question for me. So I do recognize rituals. I would say in my art, rituals is part of my process, but maybe rituals is not the right word. But I mean, it just depends on what the art form is. I'm gonna say for my visual art, I channel my visual art through the the art of alchemy. And so usually it's just the process of, taking life experiences, taking life pain, just really like sinking into my dark side and emotional side and spiritual side, and creating art, creating a portrait that helped communicate what I'm feeling or what I went through to help, I would say, liberate me from it. As to where for theater, um, which is which varies within costume design and scenic design, I would say for costume, I'm very dramaturgically driven, and so the playwright, they wrote a story. I'm there to help tell that story as a designer, but there's also a dramaturgical story that will vary from director to director, theater, theater, designer, designer. And so I find my own way to find the rituals within the story. Some stories feel more round. The story feels round. For example, this play I worked on called Zoo Man and the Sign by Charles Fuller. Um, the story starts with a death, and then it ends with a death. And so it's almost like a circle. Like, of course, there's a beginning, middle, end within the story, but it seemed like there's a cycle and it just keeps repeating itself over and over and over again. And so sometimes my rituals may be connected to shapes, they could be connected to colors, and they could be connected to how can I visually um, show how this story is evolving? How can I show this character is evolving? And so that's how that's pretty much what I mean when I say that I'm really into rituals when it comes to my work, because I'm really driven by those elements of storytelling.
Mm, that's good.
So it's never the case where it's like, oh my God, Ramaj, oh my God, that red dress is so beautiful. What made you, pick that red dress? Well, I didn't pick it because I like the color red, or it was written in the script that the dress had to be red. I chose that it was red because of and so I have like the dramaturgy to in the research to back up why I made that choice and why it was the best choice to tell this production of the story.
That's interesting because even though I've been in theater for even though I've been in theater for some time now, like I'm just now learning the importance of yielding to the story.
Mm-hmm.
What you're talking about is exactly that. Like you're like, oh, I don't make any of my choices because I want to do it, because I want it to. It's like, no, the script says um,
Mm-hmm.
this is
Yeah,
what.
and for me, what I'm gonna say is that I'm gonna say that I'm a different breed within my discipline. I'm sure there's others that think like me, but me personally, I don't like to get too caught up with what is suggested in the parentheticals, like in the script. For example, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, which is a play that I designed in grad school, which there's a solid period, is loosely based on a real person. Like you're just dealing with something that's really grounded, like something really grounded. And me, I'm not really attracted to a lot of grounded or historical pieces, although I do it all the time. But I find a way into it. I find a philosophy. I find a ritual. I find an underlining story that that captures my attention, that I just have to draw out, which makes the story feels new, makes it feel fresh, and it reveals the evolution of the character. And so one choice that I made was that um, the way I kind of organized that play is that I broke it down in groups, if that makes sense. So I sort of labeled Ma Rainey as the queen or the chief commander, and then her band is her soldiers, and then they're at war with the producers. And so when I break it down in those groups, I start to think about uniforms. So it's no longer like, oh, it's this period, so they wore this dress and they wore that, and so that's what they're going to wear. Like that's never the case for me. I want to break down the story and have basic understanding of what's happening um, in the subtext, like dramaturgically, what's happening, so I can make a design choice, not a wardrobe choice or a stylish choice, but a design choice as to how can I help tell this story and how can I show the evolution of Ma Rainey. And so the way I thought of her coat, which is a very important garment in my opinion in the story, is it's like your first impression of her. And so I wanted her to feel royal. I wanted her to there's so much anticipation of her coming into the space. And so when she comes in, I want the audience to feel that anticipation. I want it to materialize, if that makes sense. So I made a choice of using collage, a black and white palette, and thinking of the coat as like this medieval armor. Now, no one really would think about, Ma Rainey, the play or the character in that way, but that's kind of like my process of how I think about, okay, she's wearing a coat, but what does this coat mean? And what does it mean for her to take it off? What does it mean for her to take her shoes off? So she's a person that represents power. And throughout the whole play, she has power, but at the same time, she's shedding off clothes. So what is it saying? Like, okay, this is my uniform. I have power. I have it in the palm of my hand. Now I'm all the way down to my dress and I'm barefoot and I still have power. What does that say about the character? And so that helps inform me what is she wearing and what color it needs to be and how does it evolve.
Wow. Wow. Um, it's always so interesting hearing people. It's always so interesting hearing people in other disciplines that like I know nothing about. I think you're the first person um, in a while that I spoke to about costumes. So it's already
Mm-hmm.
always so interesting to hear your perspective um, and how you tell the story, how you collab with the story. Um, I would say you're very, I would say for this next question, it's something that I picked up on about you. But in your work, you're very solely, and I don't know how this informs your
I'm
costume.
really what?
Solely, you're very into your body. You're very expressive with your body. You're
Yes.
like, how does your body influence, you as an artist, and how do you use your body as an artist? Or your body as
Well, one thing I will say that is kind of obvious, and people may not. I'm pretty sure people realize it, but they um, don't know what to think of it or how to ask or ask why this is happening. But I'm like aware of what I'm doing. But I talk with my hands, which is a common thing. A lot of people talk with their hands, but my hand gestures are slightly different or slightly more specific than others because I used to be a interpreter. So I learned ASL, American Sign Language, and I used to interpret for the deaf. And so oftentimes when I'm communicating and I can't think of the word in English, sometimes I would unconsciously sign it in American Sign Language. And so like ever since I took that on, which was like years back when I was in undergrad, and so it still kind of manifests itself when in my everyday life. So so that's one thing about just me and communicating. Like I'm very aware of my hands and communicate. Like I'm very visual with how I move my hands.
Hmm. And does like you and that ever influences your costume or your scenic work or any of that?
Well, in terms of costume, this is not always consistent, but sometimes in terms of movement, I like to wear the costume, or when I'm thinking about fabrication, my fabrication process is a little different. Sometimes I know exactly what I want, sometimes I don't know what I want, but I have an idea of how the costume needs to move. So sometimes I would go to the fabric store or buy fabric, and I'll just drape it on my body, and I'll just move around and be like, yes, this is how I need this character to move. So there's never I always sort of in a way Although I do design for dance, but even for plays, I kind of think of the costume like for dance, or I think about movement and dance a lot, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Um, so that has like a great influence of why I paint a certain way, or why there's a train, because I already in a way directed this moment. Um, but yeah,
Wow.
I'm
Okay.
into movement a lot.
So, can you speak about your last project? Because you just worked on something very fun.
Hmm.
Can you speak about your last project?
Yeah. So at the National Black Theater in Harlem, they have this residency where they bring on, I think maybe two playwrights, possibly more. I'm not absolutely sure. But they work on a play for a couple of months to a year, to eventually do a workshop production of it. So this spring, I worked on Bayano
Hmm.
by Daryl Holmes, and I worked with Jeffrey Page, who is famously known as a choreographer and worked with different artists. And he directed this play. And so Bayano is it's a really dense story. So let me see, how can I briefly um, describe what this story is. Bayano is this historical character back in 16th century Panama, who is a refugee slave who fought or had war against the Spanish to gain freedom, basically. And so this story that Darryl wrote is loosely based on that. And so we get an understanding of the background story of Bayano. Um, and we are taken through um, his journey of being a refugee and being a ruler, and understanding that he's from Yoruba land, and that's where he and his people was, taken away from. And so we just go through this journey of his life, and then eventually his death, and how these different worlds, Yoruba land, the world that he's in, and his different families, right? Because in Yoruba land, he was married to someone, and now he's in a relationship 20 years later in Panama. And, it's just this story where you kind of see these worlds merge together, and how they go through this spiritual process of liberating themselves. So yeah, that's like a very loose version of the story. It's really complex, really good. But I think the what excited me about this story was that I always been interested in working on a story that's like grounded in history, but it has this sense of magic in it. There's something magical that happens within the story. So in this case, there are deities that are in the story that help Bayano through this journey. Um, and so there's a lot of talk about religion. So we're dealing with the Spaniards who are talking about Christianity, or enforcing Christianity onto the slaves, but also Bayano and Yoruba land, they have their religion is something totally different, more complex, and they serve more than one god, and each god represents something different. And so I think it's really fun to see that manifest itself, and see these two worlds collide, these two religions, and how it helps liberate someone into freedom. So yeah, there's a lot of movement, and characters going in and I mean actors going in and out of different characters. So there's like costume changes happening on stage, quick changes, and you just really get this fun journey of six people telling a story that contains of like you know 50 characters.
Hmm. Wow. Um, can you talk about, and I didn't think I was going to ask this question, but this is actually a really cool, good question. So for people who are not, I know there's people in theater who've been doing theater for a while and still do not know the process of when a costume designer is brought on until the show opens.
Can you repeat that question one more time?
The process of when a costume designer is brought on until the show opens. How is that process? Can you step by step of when you first receive the script
Mm-hmm.
until the show
Uh,
opens?
right. I mean, in terms of like a designer being adopted to a project, I mean that varies. Um, in the case of Bayano, and this is true for many productions, the director will usually suggest or demand who they want to work with. So Jeffrey Page, I worked with him before on his thesis at Columbia, and we had a great process, great collaborative process, and we enjoyed, working together and really just diving into his thesis. And he invited me onto this project, and that was that. I was there. I was like, sure, I'm down. What was different about this time that we're working together is that he wanted me to do costume and scenery, which is something that I've done both of them separately, but in terms of like within one production, I never took that on. I mean, that's something that I've been interested in. When the right time and opportunity comes, I was going to say yes, which I did. He requested of me before, and I told him no. So when he asked me again, I was like, I can't say no this time. I can't say no, because my fear is that I might abandon one over the other because I'm so detailed and I'm so like into dramaturgy, that when I do work on a show where I only the costume designer, I'm just really in it. So when I'm thinking about, oh, I'm dealing with costumes and scenery, is like, I don't want to be overwhelmed trying to work things out all the way up to the end of tech. So in terms of the process of a designer, usually that would happen. The director or the producers will, you know, create a team, a creative team, and we will get whatever first draft. If it's a new play, just know it's going to be a second draft that's going to come somewhere. Um, we will get the play and we'll read it on our own, and I would have a conversation with the director. I think, well, yeah, with the director, and I think the beauty is that for me, in terms of my process, I like to keep in mind of the director. I know Jeffrey's background in choreography and movement. I know what his interests are. I know his process. I know how he thinks, and I know that we may talk about something in detail on this day, but by the time tech comes, we're doing something totally different.
Yeah.
So I have to keep in mind that anything could change and not to be too married to my ideas, no matter how good or resolved I think they are. Because the thing about this art form is very collaborative.
Mm-hmm.
And when you understand that and you practice that, you get a great result usually. In my personal experience, I never had a bad experience with collaborating, because the director usually trusts me and I trust them, and so because we have this trust relationship, and we always expecting one another to bring something to the table so we can weigh our options. Um, Something magical usually comes for that. So after conversations and meetings, I'll do some research. I may do some sketching or make a set model in this case, and we'll just criticize the shit out of it. That's what we do for like maybe a week, 2 weeks at max. We just criticize the shit of everything that, when we go in our little corners and then we come back and it's like, okay, what is it? It's like, okay, this shit, this is not gonna work. So there's that process, and so eventually I I have to put my foot down because I'm the person who has to materialize these things. I have to draw it. I have to figure out what the fabric is. I have to figure out how much money are they going to give me, because that's another thing about this art form is that you have like all these ideas, you have this big vision, you have this complex story that I can't even explain in 3 sentences. Is just so much happening, and it's like in your mind, it's like you see it and you can make it happen, but there's also this part of it, this business side of it, where um, you have to work within a budget, and then you have to work within a time frame, and then you have to work within resources. Resources could mean, physical things, but resources can also mean, do me, a costume designer, have a team to help me produce these costumes, or these, mask or headdress, or is this something, within this production, is this something that I have to do on my own? um, so yeah, that has a great influence on what the final product would be, because Jeffrey and I had so many ideas, and like our imagination is really huge, but then again, we have to understand that, one, this was a workshop production. It is not a world premiere or New York premiere. It's just, us materializing the script so the playwright can look at it, evaluate, go back to the writer's room, be inspired, and just really see what's happening with this play. So when it does get picked up, um, they already understand what the play is doing, what it can do, or what needs to change or evolve or whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
So they can see what needs to change or evolve. Um, so you bring it back and they can see what.
Right. So budget is a huge part, and time is a huge part. So we couldn't do all these grand ideas that we had in mind. So that's where it's like, okay, we want to do this, we want to do that, but that's not essential to telling the story. So is really this process of like watering, I don't like that word, watering down the idea to really get to the core of what is needed to tell this story. Yes, this would be great. Yeah, this color would be great. This shape, this ritual would be great. But
What
is
do we
the
need?
what do we need? Oh, she need a shirt. All right, I can do that. Let me get this shirt. Oh, they need a skirt. Gotta have a skirt. Oh, we need these period garments. We probably can't have like all the different details and all the distressing and da 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 da. But as long as we have something that communicates what the slaves were wearing in that period, then we're doing our part in doing this workshop production. And so in this case, because there's a lot of this design process varies, story to story, production, budget to budget. But I'm gonna just stick with the Bayano um, process. So once I kind of figure out the budget and I buy all the fabric and I know how many actors and how many roles, once I got that all down, like the math of it, uh, then I just start building. And I may draw something, and when I start building it, it may change because I don't have all I don't have enough money to get all the yardage that I need, or I don't have the skills to produce this elaborate thing, you know what I mean, that I drew, or whatever idea I had. And so yeah, the process can start off really big, or should start off really big, and then sometimes it just kind of like narrows down. And I think the beauty of the process is that it'll be great to have like billions of dollars to produce a story like Bayano. But something really magical happens when you have very few resources and very little time, because you're not sitting in your bed or sitting at your desk thinking about all these variations or things that can happen. You just have to be like, okay, this is what we need. Boom, 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 boom. You like making decisions like really fast. You're working really fast. You don't have time to think. You have to just trust your instincts and just go for it. So that's what I really enjoy about that process. And also with this workshop, this is something that I don't usually do, or sometimes you don't have the privilege to do as a designer, is that I was pretty much at 90% of the rehearsals, because the thing is, I know how Jeffrey works. Yes. And so I may have a strong idea of what is happening in this scene, or we talked about this scene. And then because there's a lot of movement, a lot of magic, a lot of rituals that are happening, people going in and out of characters. I may have an idea of a costume or just this moment in general, and Jeffrey would just get like this, this instant inspiration, and it's like, whoa, this is not how I didn't see this coming. So we need a whole new costume. Or this costume's not going to work. Or we need to rig this costume. Or we need to water down this costume so he can go from this character to that character in less than 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of technical and ideas change that happen. So I had to be present in rehearsal, because if not, I had been present, I would be really stressed out, because I would read a rehearsal report or go to rehearsal the next day whenever I decide to go back. I would be really confused in trying to keep up with something where we only had a 2-week rehearsal period. So if we was doing scene 5, 6, 7, no, well, scene 5 on this day, we're not getting back to scene 5 until tech come. So I need to be there for scene 5 and figure out what's happening, what needs to change, woo. So when we in tech, it's already resolved.
Right.
So I never really worked like that before, but I understood that what the story consisted of, how this director worked, and understand that this is a workshop production and anything can change at any time. So once you understand what your circumstances are, the better you can navigate to a final product.
So tell us about one of your mentors and what do you learn from them?
Mentors. I would say I have a lot of mentors. Starting off, I didn't have a mentor. Me getting into the design was a very spontaneous thing. I did not see myself being a designer. I started off as an actor, and just me being the storyteller I am, I'm very curious. Things strikes my fancy, and so I always thought of doing scenic design. I never really considered costume. I always been into like production design. I want to do production design for film. And so I came across this group called Marcus, Artist Secret of Suite. It was going to be a show that was going to be in our next season in undergrad. I went to TSU, whoop whoop,
I'm
Texas
glad
Southern
you're telling this
University.
story too, because I heard this story. I heard this story
You
on
said
one of
what?
your platforms. I'm glad you're telling this story because I've heard this story on one of your platforms.
Yeah. So, I read the script, and so I would say that in terms of mentor, I would say that Terrell Alvin McCraney is one of my biggest inspirations that got me into design. I literally had the intent to audition for Marcus or the Secret of Suite, and I read the script and I was like, oh my god, like, oh my god.
Have you worked with him before?
With Terrell?
Yeah.
No, this was back in undergrad.
Oh,
So I mean, I met him before, but I never worked with him. But just reading the script, it was like the story is so complex, and there's just so many visual and dramaturgical aspect to it that I was no longer seeing myself as an actor in that moment. I was literally designing that show. So I would say that playwrights are my biggest inspiration, in me becoming a designer. Like when I have the right play in my hand, like it's just game over. I get so excited. I don't get tired. Ambition starts to kick in. I stay up late hours because I'm just really excited and just have to get this story out. And so that's how I winded up being a costume designer. I hit up the director and I was like, hey, I never done costume design before. I don't know how to draw. I don't know how to sew. I don't know how to do shit. But what I do know is that I have to design this show. Yes, I understand this program. We don't have, a design program. Students don't design, the productions of our season. But I'm letting you know right now, I read the script and I have to design it. and he said yes, and so the rest is history. But one, so Terrell Alvin McCraney, and another person that I just my heart goes out to is Jeffrey Holder and also George C. Wolfe. George C. Wolfe because the Color Museum was the first play I ever read, and that's not an easy script to read. You have to do a lot of research when you a youngin or whatever. And Jeffrey Holder, he is a great mentor of mine. I never met him. He passed away before, I made my full transition into becoming a designer. But the thing that he has taught me in his life, which has and even still to this day is kind of you know complicated to have all these disciplines, because Jeffrey Holder, he's a costume designer, he's a director, he's a dancer, he's a visual artist. He does all these things. And so I find myself having interest in multiple disciplines. And so sometimes it's hard to navigate all of those, or, build up on all of these things. And I think he's just a great example of how to not be put in a box, and how sometimes you should concentrate. You should do this costume thing, but also make your next project or something. Your next thing be your other discipline, so you won't get caught up in this box. And so I admire him a lot in the work he does, and how he just identified himself as a storyteller. And at any cost, by any means, that's what he's going to do. If he can't write it, if he can't direct it, he's going to dance it out. That's my philosophy. That's how I kind of think of things. Like, oh, I have this story, or I have this idea, but I don't know if me writing it is going to get the story out. I'm going to dance it. Never danced in my life, don't have no type of technique, barely have rhythm. I'm going to dance this piece, because that is the best medium to tell it.
Yes, if you haven't, I think is this documentary still on Netflix? I remember being really inspired by Jeffrey Holder by watching a documentary about him and his wife.
Carmen. Yeah, I haven't I came across it, but I'm working on it. It's on my computer right now. Like, I have a tab with it. I just have to. No, it's not on Netflix. I don't think. Was it ever on Netflix?
I feel like I watched it on a platform, and I want to say it was Netflix. But
because every time I look it up, I think it's on. Amazon or something.
On what?
I think it's on Amazon, or
it might be on Amazon, but it actually changed. I didn't realize how much he has done for the art world. I know a couple of people who actually were able to work with him, but being a young person in theater, not really knowing, and being that he was like you said, when we were coming up, that was already when he already passed, or when he was transitioning. So it was, he's one of those people that I don't think get enough credit in theater. And I think everyone should go out and watch that documentary about Jeffrey Holder and his wife, Carmen. And I believe Carmen is still here? She's
still here.
She's like 80.
And she just had a concert like a year ago that I went to. And I watched her move. I watched her dance. I just watched her be. And beautiful. Beautiful.
I'm just saying, I'm amazed, because she's been around and danced with Alvin Ailey himself. So it's like, that's why I was like, she's a living legend.
Yes.
And yeah, so everyone should really look at that documentary. It's an amazing documentary about their whole relationship, their relationship to the Ailey company. He is the costume designer and director for and scenic artist for The Wiz, right, on Broadway. Did he do all three?
I don't know about no scenic artist now.
Okay. So he is the
costume. I don't know about that one, but definitely director and costume designer.
Yes, and choreographer. That's what it was. I was like, wait, there's three things that he
Yeah.
for that show, choreographer, or yeah, I got to see who did the who did the scenic artistry for that. But uh, you actually do. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. How his influence definitely shows in you. I would say, oh, so I'm gonna ask two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, this is hard. This is a hard one. Okay, because there's a couple more questions
Oh
I
Lord,
want
that
to
means it's
ask
gonna be hard for me.
you.
I'm listening.
If you could predict the next trend
Uh-huh.
in the art world, and when I
Uh-huh.
say the art world, I mean whatever discipline you want to talk about. Um, what do you think it is?
Um, define trend.
Trend, our next wave.
The next wave. Well, I don't know about what the next wave is going to be. You know, this kind of thing is a little hard to predict. I do know, this is what I do know, it's an observation, is that theater is getting really tech savvy, if that makes sense. So, you know how I was talking about, what are the bases to tell this story? Do we need all these elaborate things? And I feel that now, with technology being implemented in theater, storytelling, uh, the world is starting to expand, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
when you have that underwater scene, it doesn't have to be like, oh, we're just gonna shine this blue light, and you know the performers are gonna be like this. Like, things are becoming more technologically fancy and advanced or whatever. But what I do want to see is that I want to see futurism appear on the stage. And I think with today's technology and as it advanced over the years, I think that's possible. People have responded strongly to Black Panther, which is a film, and a lot of these sci-fi and futuristic things are best represented in terms of technology through film. But I'm excited for that to happen on the stage, and how technology can help enhance and better tell that story. So
Yeah,
I'm excited for it. I want to see it, and I want to see black bodies. In terms of that prediction.
yeah.
Okay, Afrofuturism. There we go.
West Side Story did a good job with
Yes,
technology.
yes.
This is what I haven't seen it. I've seen clips of it on YouTube and everything, but I like that director particularly. I love his work. But
Mhm.
they use it, and actually Black bodies, because they're Afro Latino. A lot of Afro Latinos was in that show.
Mhm.
Um, so
Right. That show is beautiful. Is very beautiful, and like I don't know how they came up with this idea, but I've been told that this director is really interested in experimental theater, and so I guess this was his his little bit of in terms of like having live cameras,
yeah,
having the scenery be like this big screen of showing like live footage that's happening on stage, but also pre-recorded moments or scenes that's happening, or just this idea of that there's something happening on stage, and then there's something happening backstage that we can't see, but we can see it because it's being filmed as if it was like West Side Story live on television.
mhm.
And I think that was really magical, and really, oh, you know, it was a very beautiful story and well told. And I was just like, ah! And it's a huge cast, it's a huge theater, huge stage, and so with theaters like that, you for me, I kind of get out of it because you don't have this intimacy with the story or with the characters. And
Yeah,
so because the face of the lead actors, their heads are this damn big, you
yeah,
know
yeah.
it's like you can see that tear, you can see the little twitch in their eye, like it's like you watching the film, but you also get that live experience, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. Like,
And Van Hove, Van Hove, he does a lot of he strips his work. He's a minimalist.
Mm-hmm.
He strips
Yeah, it
his,
was very stripped.
yeah. So I will say that's also, like you said, a lot of people are asking,
But it
what
wasn't no
do
low
I
budget,
need?
you
No,
know,
people
strip
are asking what I need.
huh?
No, but it goes back to you're saying like, what do I need to tell the story?
Right. Yeah, there's different version of that. I don't know who the director is. Um, but there was a recent production of The Glass Menagerie. Now, this scenic designer, Lieberman, he is known for his minimal sets. Just look it up. You'll know what I'm talking about. He's a minimalist or whatever. So there's that version. But then when you're dealing with technology, it can seem like simple, but there's a lot of holes. Like he's in a way cheating, if that makes sense. We can make this look like a whole city, and then boom, now it's this other, because you're dealing with LED, lights where you're projecting pictures, and so in the space can change without changing physically, if that makes sense.
He does. He does
So
a.
there's different forms.
He has a good a view from the bridge. He directed that, and he uses almost little to no set to do it, and um, that's the first thing I've ever seen by him, and I think that was
Mm-hmm.
National Theater Live. I was in undergrad, which it's for every. I think every actor would know about it, but people who are not actors, well, everybody in the theater world, I say, know about National Theater Live. But if you don't know, that's a really good platform, and I think they're doing something special because of this COVID situation. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but check it out. Check all the art things that normally were costing buku bucks. Check those things out and see, if you
Is
can
they
find somebody.
streaming stuff for free
Yeah,
or whatever?
if you're streaming anything that you can watch from home. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this is a not it's not some people are calling it the new normal. It's not normal at all. It's new. But it's not normal.
It's new, but it's great. What we always talk about how technology and social media has been like this heavy dark thing that's just fucking up society and communication. Or even when people was talking about Instagram was gonna take away the likes and the views and shit, and like now we're going through this pandemic, and like now it's like in a way saving art, or keeping communication and creativity alive. So technology has its pros and it has its cons.
I like the idea that they were going to take the likes and views away.
I like that idea to an extent, but that's a different conversation.
I liked it, but
I like to see how many people viewed that. Not
but
that it matters, but
no,
it's
you
like,
will be able to, apparently they were saying that the person will be able to see, but it won't show.
right. Well, in that case, I don't care if other people would see that. How many views, it doesn't really matter. But I want to see.
For artists, so artists, we like to see who view our page. We like to see the numbers. That's why we usually go to a business page. Because it is our business. Social media becomes
Right.
our business, not just something fun.
Right.
Which is a word RAMAJ does not like. I think, and that's one of your words you don't like. Fun.
What word?
Fun.
Oh yeah. It's not really a part of my vocabulary.
But
Nothing's ever fun. Nothing's ever fun for me. Like everything, it may seem like I'm enjoying myself, which I am, but I would never describe it to be fun. I would never describe my work. Okay, so misconception about costume designers. Boom. People think it's like, oh, it's this grand thing, this beautiful thing. You get to dress up and do makeup and do hair and da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but it's really hard, really stressful, and there's a lot that goes into it. So the only time I'm really enjoying myself is before I draw, when I'm just conjuring up all my ideas, and then when the show opens, because it's like, yay, it's over. But like in between, it's just me like, stressing out, and I have moments where I enjoy myself with the actors, because the actors, they keep me up. They keep me laughing. They keep my spirits alive. They, help balance out me. But yeah, fun, nah. Hard work, yes.
Yes, I was telling somebody the other day. I was like, yeah, magic, um, is hard work.
Yeah,
Magic is hard work. It's yeah, it takes a while. Um,
yeah. It's a lot of hard work. I remember I was working on my thesis, the Color Museum. Talking about circles. Like I started theater with the Color Museum, then I ended my academic career with the Color Museum. But I finished it, and then my professor was like, "Oh, how was your thesis? How was the process? Like, did you have fun?" And I'm like, "Fun, fun? What are you talking about, darling? There was no fun." But yeah, like she looked at me like I was crazy. Like, what you mean you didn't have fun? Like, this is your thesis. It's like, okay, we have two definitions of what fun is. You know what I mean? Like it was a lot of hours of me being isolated and trying to figure out this puzzle and how to make this story fresh. I had a whole new perspective of the Color Museum. So there was no laughs and giggles and I had this much time, this much patience, this many resources, and I have to make some fucking magic happen. So that
yeah.
was me the whole time.
So wow. Okay, one more last question because I want to get
Mm-hmm.
um especially because now if do you have any advice for artists who might feel like they're stuck creatively or
Mm.
to expand yourself creatively?
I find that for me, I am a introvert. So I have a habit of like staying in the room, staying in the house, don't getting, not getting out and experiencing this thing called life. And so when I was in grad school, which is not too long ago, I would have moments where, I get stuck. I can't connect to the story because my principles is that, it's not my job to really decide or profess whether I like or hate a play. My job is to figure a way in how to make this story um, personal to me. And so sometimes that becomes difficult if your life experiences are limited. Because in the world of plays, so much history, so many perspectives, so many philosophies, so many things that you are taking in and learning. And like, I feel that as an artist, you just have to get out the house. You got to try new things, see different movies. See that movie, it's like, I would never see that movie, but see it as an artist, so you can evaluate it, so you can learn a lesson from it and adopt it, or, go to that party or go hang out with friends. And like, with those life experiences, that helps enrich your career in your art, because in a way you're opening up your palette. And so that was a challenge that I had in grad school. I felt that because I was so into work and so embedded in it, that I couldn't find a way to connect with it. Talking about these people who are going out and living their lives, in this story, and it's like, but I'm not going out and living my life. So how can I connect with this character? So in a way, just like actors when they're taking on these characters and their lives are so different and they have to do some method acting and they have to do this, whatever it takes to tap into this character so they can empathize with them. In a way, designers have to do that, but like on steroids, because we're not dealing with one character, we are dealing up to 50 characters per play. And the way this career is, our jobs are layered, right? You may be closing one play and halfway through another play, so you're juggling a lot of things. And so it's kind of hard to have your personal life or outgoing life, but when you schedule it in, it makes your work and communication and connecting with other artists more fun because you're not limited.
Yes, so go out and experience something new.
Yes.
Go out and do something new. Well, in this case, stay in and do something new. uh,
Yes, and
go out.
you may learn something about yourself in the process because I mean that's my personal experience. You know, I've always been fascinated with Erica Badu, just fascinated, and so I just been like obsessed with her and like just researching different things that she do or say or whatever she's talking about. And I'm like, alchemy. I never understood what alchemy was, and so when I kind of reached out of myself to explore what that is, and then it kind of branched out to this one thing, and next thing you know, you're reading like 5 different articles or books, just to understand this one little thing,
I don't
and
even know
like
what that.
just doing that.
I mean, I don't know
Huh?
what that is. We have to talk about that. I don't know what that is per se.
Alchemy.
Yeah.
Um. So alchemy is scientifically is like the practice of taking um metals, various metals, and bringing together, melting them together to create gold. And so, in the form of art, it's this process of taking all these life experiences, all these emotions, all these things in your life, all the the bad, the ugly, the pain, and putting them together, melting them together, and producing art. And
Mm.
so that's something that is very reflected in my work. Um, like a lot of all my work is personal. In a way, it's been manifested to heal and liberate myself. And so that's why I'm into visual art because sometimes I can't write it, or being a costume designer, my job is limited to what the playwright wrote. But
Mhm.
it's like I also have some stories to tell, and I can't really tell my stories through that medium of costume design because it's my job to serve. And so through painting, I can tell whatever story I want. And so I have this series called the Emotional Black Boy series, which is basically a diary of like all the intense emotions that I experienced through grad school. And so I just took all of that and I just emoted that, put those emotions within the portrait and then put it out to the world for people to see and interpret that on their own. And so that's a way of counseling and talking about your problems and then putting it in the art and taking it away from yourself. And it's like, okay, I was depressed, or this thing happened, or that happened. I made art of it. Now I'm healing myself, and now it's over there. It's no longer like this, this luggage or this baggage that's on me. I created something beautiful out of something that was so ugly, like scrap metals, and now it's gold. So
Wow.
that is the art of alchemy. And one of my favorite alchemists is Erica Badu. She's a boss bitch.
She is.
People think she's weird, but she's weird because of the kind of artist that she is.
Wasn't
Right?
she?
She's not here to entertain and do pop music. She's in a way healing herself, and she's healing her fans and her community through
She
these
was born
subtle
underwater.
messages.
She
She
was
was
born
born when?
underwater with $3.06. Was that it?
Yeah, 360.
Yeah, she was born underwater with $3.06. If you don't know about her, Erica Badu, look her up.
Yeah.
Um, this is a really good interview. This is a really good. I don't even want to call it interview because it just feels like it was a discussion and very laissez-faire, like very much laid back.
Yes.
Um,
I'm over here eating cookies, like little vanilla wafers, and drinking tea out of my TSU cup.
right.
Nothing pharma. I'm in my
Um,
mom's office. I'm in Houston right now, so just chilling.
right. So before I let go, or before I end this meeting
Hmm.
discussion, can you just let us know your Instagram handle, or
Hmm.
maybe your website?
Sure. Instagram handle is Ramaj, RAMAJ underscore Jamar, JAMAR. So Ramaj underscore Jamar. Website is ramajjamar.com.
Okay. All right. So you heard it here. How Ramaj makes his art, and I'll go out and enjoy it on those different platforms. Or come see a show that he's designing. And we'll see you next time.